Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So we are now exactly 1 week away from the Bad Batch Season 2. On the channel, I've covered the latest updates, the early reviews from those red screeners, and a couple of leaks as well. Well, today my dear Mandalorians, we have a new poster for Hunter, and with this, Disney Plus posted a new TV spot called Mission. It's mostly footage we've already seen, but there are a couple of new stills that confirm a few fan theories and suspicions that many of us had going into the second season, so no more jibber jabber, let's begin. So the first of the new frames is an extension of the conversation between Crosshair and Cody at the memorial wall on Geonosis. Crosshair simply says they do what needs to be done, probably a response to when Cody said that some of the clones are questioning the order. As we've spoken about extensively, the themes of defecting but also staying loyal are going to be recurring throughout season 2, and I think it was Brad Rao who said that we're gonna see a kind of clone uprising where those who doubt the Empire are gonna decide to disobey, but do not count on Crosshair being one of them. And on the subject of Cody, from some of the reviews, it doesn't sound as though his story goes the way we assume. I always thought Captain Rex was going to help him remove his chip, and even though he is going to defect, reading between the lines, he's still going to go his own way, so he will defect, but he won't join our allies, which opens up the possibility of him showing up further down the timeline, maybe in another show, and this is something he was originally going to do in the early scripts of Kenobi. Next up, we have a scene where Omega says it could be fun, most likely in reference to a mission that her brothers are cautious about. From left to right, we have Tech, Wanda Sykes' character Fi Genoa, Omega with longer hair, but just as jovial in her mannerisms, Wrecker, and finally Hunter. Notice that Echo is either out of frame or not present here at all, and this reminds me of what Jennifer Corbett said in her interview with IGN. She noted that Echo and Rex fall out with the Bad Batch at some point in the season. They don't see eye to eye, so is this why Echo is not in the frame? Let's find out. And finally, we have the Bad Batch with Gungi on Kashyyyk. Tarful and 2 other adult Wookiee warriors come to greet them. Gungi has seemingly joined the Batch's ranks, and I imagine that he and Omega become good friends, and this confirms the show is utilising the unfinished Kashyyyk arc from the Clone Wars. In case you don't know, this was meant to be a 4-episode story arc written by Matt Miknovet, with production codes 617 to 620. It originally starred Yoda and the Bad Batch on Kashyyyk during the Clone Wars. At the Untold Clone Wars panel at Star Wars Celebration a few years ago, Dave Filoni revealed the plot of this story.
George had this idea that the Wookiees knew these giant tree spirits, and so I sketched this for him, and then you see the little yellow post-it on there is because he didn't like the first head I drew for it. The Wookiees could kind of summon these giant tree gods and ride them, but it was a very kind of religious thing for them. They didn't like to do it. They didn't like to take them necessarily into battle. It was a kind of a benevolent way at looking at their existence with nature, really. Yeah, I like the idea that the clones that worked with Yoda would have kind of smacked his face on their helmet stuff. You look at the front of that clone, that guy has kind of a silhouette of Yoda's ears going back on the helmet, which was kind of fun. And it was always kind of neat to get to, I mean, you know, to draw Chewbacca and Yoda, and that's my job, is always, to this day, 10 years, it's still really fun to do. And drawing Yoda for George was always great. He is his favorite character in a lot of ways. So, yeah, this was a scene that happened in the arc where Tarful basically was asking permission of the Forest to kind of go into battle and do some things that were rather challenging. In a bigger portion of the story arc, it was a Trandoshan leader was working for the Separatists, and basically they had an alliance with the Separatists to attack Kashyyyk, and in order to kind of get them out of the city of trees, the Wookiees were going to have to burn a portion of the forest. Clones had no problem doing this because strategically it made sense, but it was very upsetting to the Wookiees. So you had kind of a push and pull dynamic between the Wookiees and the clones where they didn't really get along, but they were trying to find a common purpose in fighting the Separatists. But
just like the trailer, he revealed the characters would ride on giant ape lizards that were holy to the Wookiees. To get the enemy out their cities, they would have to burn down some trees. A part of this arc would also be about the clones and Wookiees finding common ground to fight the Separatists. Only a few bits and bobs of the 4 episodes were made into animatics before the series cancellation. It was also revealed that Chewbacca would be there, and parts of the Star Wars Holiday Special would be canonized. Now, apart from Yoda not being there because he's now on Dagobah, and this taking place long after the Clone Wars, the story is very similar. The giant monkey lizards, Tarful, the Trandoshans, they could integrate a lot of this. not to mention Luminara and Julie and her arrest, which would also connect to Star Wars Rebels. So we're returning to Kashyyyk, and it seems as though the Bad Batch are helping the Wookiees fight the Trandoshans, and also form a Wookiee rebellion that we later see in Jedi Fallen Order with Saw Gerrera. This 1 or 2 episode arc in the Bad Batch is going to be absolutely amazing, and I hope to see some more lore surrounding the Wookiees, as they're one of my favourite species in all of Star Wars. So that is pretty much all the new footage from this TV spot. Fingers crossed we get another 1 or 2 over the next couple of days. And remember guys, the Bad Batch Season 2 is a double episode premiere. We have 2 episodes in week 1, January the 4th. Spoils of War and Ruins of War, which according to most of the reviewers are 2 of the best episodes of the entire season, the strongest episodes. So just like Season 1, which started with an amazing episode Aftermath, this one kicks off with a bang too. By the sounds of things, we're in for an absolute treat. Are you guys excited for the Bad Batch Season 2? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Wookiees are back in Star Wars. Yes, we got Black Chrysanthemum in the Book of Boba Fett, but it's great to see Gungi and Tarful, and maybe even Chewbacca. Now, a huge difference between the first and second season is that the Batch are no longer on the run. Instead, they're laying low and trying to avoid the Empire rather than actively running from it, all the while trying to make a bit of money and survive. They have 6 months more experience from the last time we saw them, and the dynamic between them would have changed quite a bit. For example, the creatives on the show said Omega is helping them as much as they're teaching her, and I believe Omega is much more of a target than her brothers. We've got to bear in mind she was Nala Se's medical assistant and might be considered someone useful now that Nala Se is working on Mount Tantis. So this could be one of the reasons, as one reviewer suggested, the Empire is after her at a later point in the season. And so finally, my dear friends, a tidbit for the Andor series. Nemik's Manifesto, such a powerful speech that would help the early rebellion. Well, as some fans pointed out at the time, the message goes against Yoda's most famous lesson from The Empire Strikes Back, but as you'll come to see, as we'll discuss, the two are not necessarily incompatible, they're just very different and for different people. In Andor episode 12, Rick's Road, Cassian reads Nemik's Manifesto just before Marva's funeral. In the manifesto, Nemik urges the rebels to, quote, try in overthrowing the Empire, which goes against what Yoda said, do or do not, there is no try. Andor, subverting Yoda's words, doesn't deny the message. It speaks to where the rebels are at this stage in the timeline compared to later on. It's an acknowledgement that the early rebels at this stage in the Andor series do face the chance of failing. The odds are stacked against them, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't try. Whereas in Luke's case, as a Force user much later on, he has to do, there is no try. In the case of Andor and the Rebellion, the fight against the Empire as smaller people is very difficult, but even the smallest acts of insurrection contribute, and so Nemik urges them to try. For Yoda, success or failure is all that matters, but Nemik's manifesto says just the opposite. Trying is the thing that matters. If you enjoyed this one, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you always. There will be times when the struggle seems impossible. I know this already. Alone, unsure, dwarfed by the scale of the enemy. Remember this, freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy. There are whole armies, battalions, that have no idea they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this, the Imperial need for control is so desperate because it's so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that. And know this, the day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this, try.